Hey everyone, and welcome back to my first season. I have not spoken to my guest today since we last worked together during our amazing 96-97 season in Club Med Playa Blanca. And I am not saying this because he is my guest today, but he really is one of the funniest, if not the funniest person I ever met in my 10 years in Club Med. His first season was in 1992-93 at the opening of Club Med Lindeman Island. He was a musician and animator. So not only am I excited to speak to him again, but I'm also doubly happy because I get to talk about my favorite place in the world and country of all time, Lindeman Island in Australia. Without further ado, I'd like you to help me please welcome from Newcastle, Australia, Mr. Luke Gus Neale. Hey Gus, how are you, sir?
Greg, great to chat. How are you doing?
I'm so happy. Like I said, I made no secret how I love Aussies. Aussies are my favorite people in the world. And when I met you, you were funny, and an Aussie. And I'm so happy to talk to you after all these years and that you agreed to share your story with us here today. So big thank you.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure, and it's good to catch up after so many years.
Yes. I don't know if you know how we do on this show. I'd like you to take me back in time. So I guess before Club Med, were you working, going to school, and then how did you find out about Club Med?
Sure. So I was at university studying tourism management. Part of my university degree, I got to organise a 5-day field trip up the east coast of Australia from Newcastle to Brisbane. And on that trip, I actually met Bellings, who was an old Belgium guy that Club Med had sent out to try and win over the locals at Byron Bay. They owned land at Byron Bay and they were trying to develop it. So we actually stayed at that property as part of our trip up. And I got to meet him and he gave me his card and said, if ever you want to work for Club Med, just give them my card and tell them Bellings sent you. So at the end of my degree, I went down to Sydney to apply for 3 jobs. One at a boutique hotel in Sydney, one at a luxury chain, and then also at Club Med. And my second interview was with this luxury chain, and she said, "Oh, are you just down for the day, or are you doing anything else while you're down here in Sydney?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just about to go to another interview with Club Med." And she looked at me and she said, "You're interviewing for Club Med?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Well, if you get it, take that." And this was the recruiter of the luxury chain.
Really?
Hotel,
Did she say why?
Okay. Well, she said, we've had people from Club Med and they're some of the best customer service and best employees we've had. So if you get a chance to go and get some experience up in the Whitsundays, I would recommend that. So I went to the interview and they called me a few days later offering me a position up at Lindeman Island.
Okay, since I worked for a university, I'm going to back you up. Which university did you attend in Australia?
University of Newcastle.
Oh, okay. And now, as I recall, I'm going to go back even further because I recall you played a mean violin. So I was curious, at what age did you start learning violin?
So I started at 7. Came home from school in 2nd grade and begged my parents to allow me to learn violin at school, which is weird because how many kids come home and beg their parents to learn violin. But apparently I picked it up fairly quickly, and then when I moved to Newcastle in 1985, I actually got a scholarship to study at the Conservatorium of Music in Newcastle. So I studied there for 4 years, and so I learned for about 12 years before stopping lessons and just playing it for fun.
Oh, wow. Okay. Interesting. All right. So you said you had your interview for Club Med in Sydney?
Yeah, with the then HR manager, Louise Hewitt. She asked me a bunch of questions, including, do I speak French? And of course I said absolutely. And then she rattled off a whole lot of things in French that I just blankly stared at her and said, okay, maybe I don't speak French, but happy to learn. She had a bit of a laugh. And then, a few days later, she offered me a role as musician, which I didn't realize at that time was a pretty rare contract.
Did you have these big illusions? Because you must have heard Club Med had resorts all over the world. So did you think you were going to be sent to your home country right off the bat?
Well, I didn't know a lot about Club Med. I grew up in a fairly conservative home. So when I got home and told my parents I was looking at working at Club Med, they were horrified. I actually remember my mum saying, "Oh, there's no way you're working there. It's nothing but a glorified brothel." And I said, "Well, I don't think it's that." So I didn't know a lot about Club Med. I didn't really understand that there were shows and that the staff got involved, or that, the only thing I did know that it was a 7-day-a-week job, which didn't bother me.
Oh, it did. So the hours didn't scare you?
No, not at all. No, I sort of was, it was my first official job in an industry that I'd studied. So I was happy just to do whatever I needed to get experience and sort of move my way to the next role or next job. I hadn't planned to stay for long. I really was just going to go up for 12 months and then come back to real life. But obviously that didn't really work out.
And since you did work ultimately all over the world with Club Meds, I'm guessing Lindemann was the shortest trip you've ever taken, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
It was yeah. I had to get a train down to Sydney, and then it was a 2 hour flight
Oh God,
up to Hamilton Island.
so lucky. Mine had quite the journey from hell when I went to Lindemann, but I don't regret it. Okay.
Well, Montreal and Brisbane are probably the two furthest cities you can travel
Yeah,
by plane. So
especially if Club Med has a sense of humor. They flew me completely the other way around. Normally, you'd go like Montreal, Vancouver, Vancouver, Sydney. No, they flew me completely the opposite way. So Montreal, New York, Paris, Paris, Sri Lanka, Sydney, Hamilton, and then another small plane from Hamilton to Lindemann.
it was probably the cheapest way, Greg.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Not the shortest way.
I gather I had time to think on the plane, and that's what I came to as well, to conclusion. Okay. Now you say, okay, you were at the opening. Now, was that a pre-existing resort, or did Club Med make that resort?
No, it was pre-existing. Club Med bought the resort off P&O,
Okay.
which is the large ship chain. I think it was the end of the 80s. They spent a couple of years developing it, and then they opened it about 3 weeks before I got there as a Club Med.
Now, what was the name of that family? There was a house there, and a family either owned the land or part of the island. Do you remember that?
Nicholson's.
Nicholson's. That's
The
right.
Nicholsons. Yeah,
Yes.
she was actually
Okay.
still there, living there my first season.
Okay. Yeah, that's right.
So I
That's
don't
right.
remember her name, but there was a lady called Mrs. Nicholson who used to live in the house
That's
behind
right. Yes.
the theatre.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Do you remember anything of your first week arriving there?
Oh, look, it was a bit of a whirlwind. I remember showing up and I had my violin and my guitar and my didgeridoo and my bakuba and sort of walking bright-eyed and bushy-tailed into the reception area. And the very first person I met was Julie Ford, who's still a dear friend to this day. And she said, "Hi, welcome to Club Med. What are you going to be doing here?" And I just said, "Oh, I'm a musician." And she said, "Oh, there's no such thing as a musician contract." And she sort of had a bit of a laugh. So I was a little bit worried that I'd not actually got the job. But yeah, realized very quickly that I was part of the entertainment team. The French chef d'animation, Fifi, he said, "Oh, you're part of the animation team." And then I got really sort of scared and quite taken aback because I thought that animation was drawing cartoons. I'd never heard that word. It was a French word that didn't exist in the Australian vocabulary. So yeah, my first 24 hours was quite a culture shock, to be honest, but a good one. I wasn't upset to be there. I was very happy, but just so many things that I had never experienced.
And your chief of village was Carlos Castro, correct?
He was a fantastic chief of village. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I hear. His name comes up a lot on the show. So, wow, opening in Lindemann, and I know when I was there. So, predominantly your guests are mostly Aussies and Kiwis, right?
We had a lot of Japanese honeymooners. There was a period in Australian tourism where most of the higher end and wealthy couples from Japan would come to the Whitsundays for 3 or 4 days.
Okay.
So we had a large Japanese contingent, but apart from that, it was Aussies and Kiwis. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So did you predominantly play at night? Like, was that this musician contract? Was this for just at night, and then you would animate in the day?
Yeah, that's right. I was paid to play music at the bar. There was a guy who was their au pair called Emmanuel, who was the boyfriend, the long-term boyfriend of one of the girls who worked, I think, a Japanese hostess or Japanese PR. So we played together every night, but then very quickly I was doing entertainment in the day with the animator, a fantastic animator called Tweedy, George or Jorge Pena. So we did everything together for the whole 12 months. And myself and Carlos and Tweedy ended up being like a trio of musos that would get around and do crazy stuff together all day. It was an amazing season. And to this day, some of my closest friends are the people I met at that season, the Aussie Geos.
Now, I'm assuming in 92, 93, you could do the same thing. So how long did it take you to realize that you could order a pizza by plane on Lindemann Island?
Oh, we never did that.
Oh, you didn't? Oh,
No,
okay.
no,
Okay.
we didn't even have days off. We got off the island twice. Once was to go to Mackay for some arts festival where we put on one of our shows, and that was a 3-hour boat trip down to Mackay. And we stayed at the Mackay International Hotel, which was just the dodgiest dive
Well,
of a
yes, I've
place.
I've been to Mackay several times, so I didn't know
Oh,
I didn't know they could call something international, but
it
okay.
was horrific.
No, I miss Mackay. I love it. We used to go watch
Yeah.
movies there, but yeah, but
So we did the show, and then we spent a night at this little nightclub called the Blue Moose, which was, about as seedy as the name suggests. So that was one night off the resort, and then we had another night where we all went to Hamilton Island for the night. But they were the only two nights we actually got off and could do things really different. When I went back as chief of village in 04 and 05, but back in 92, yeah, it was 7 days a week, and you were sort of on the island unless you did something wrong, and then you're on the next boat out.
yeah, which they call the NBO, right?
MBO, that's right.
And also when the GEs would quit, I think they would just say that term, like, okay, well, you need to give us 2 weeks, and they're like, oh no, mate, I'm NBO.
Yeah.
So yeah, what? Which is cool because they had a little bus that would take you from like where the GEs had a bar, and I assume they had their bar back then, right? The
Yeah,
GE?
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and gym and okay. Wow. Any crazy stories from that first season? How long was your first season? Was it 6
So it
months
was
or a
12
year?
months. No, it was
Okay.
a year. Yeah, I arrived on the 12th of December, which was about, as I said,
You
2 or 3
remember
weeks
the
after.
day?
I do.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
because it was sort of a significant, first time out of home and first real job. And within sort of a day or two, I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. This is sort of my environment. There was a lot of friendly people. Everyone was speaking different languages. And so, yeah, the 12th of December, and I left probably beginning of November, mid-November at the end of that season once Carlos had left. So 12-month season. It was just a series of great memories. There was first times for everything. First time, I think my very first night I was asked to go upstairs and do Spotlight, which I thought was just the best until I realized that that's the job they gave all the rookies that no one else wanted to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, just the whole environment, the shows, meeting guests. I remember we did a 14th of July Bastille Day parade.
You did, but
Yeah, because back
there was
then
no French in the village.
there was a few, but most of the senior chef de service were French. And there was I think apart from Julie, there was all French or European chef de service. And so they didn't really celebrate Australia Day. They didn't really know what that was, but they certainly celebrated Bastille Day. But I remember there was a girl from the boutique who arrived on the little green John Deere buggy to the pool, but she had one breast exposed because that's what happened in the old days of.
Oh yeah,
that's what
that's
they
right.
celebrated.
Yeah.
And I remember all of the Australian guests and all the Australian staff just absolutely horrified that in this family resort there would be a girl arrive, and it was painted red and
Yeah.
the colors of the flag or whatever they did. But yeah, so there was quite a few cultural mismatches that had to be worked out over the years. But no, it was just a series of amazing moments.
Now, when I was there, this is why I love one of a zillion reasons I love Australia. We'd be getting ready for the show, and my guys would say, "Greg, you can't do the show. Why? It's state of origin." So the whole evening would shut down while they watched, the rugby game. So did this happen there too? Like, or the Melbourne Cup, I think, the horse race, like everything shut down.
I think it was on in the bar, but no, it was
okay.
It was probably about as French a season as
really?
Lindemann ever had.
Okay.
Purely because it was an opening, and I don't think Club Med sort of said, well, let's fill it with Aussie chef de service or Aussie, culture, because they didn't know. It's something that had to be learned. I mean, there was a stage that we even had team members doing like an Aboriginal dance in one of the gala nights, which these days would just be such a faux pas and not politically correct. You would never misappropriate, an Indigenous dance by having Europeans dress up as locals. So there was a few things that we just had to work through that weren't known just because Club Med had never operated in Australia before.
Yeah, so my culture stock stemmed from the sweet and sour crocodile on the menu. I don't know if you had that when you were there.
We did have that. Yes.
There was another thing too. It was a very cute animal. I don't think it was kangaroo, but it might have been. But I can't remember what a very cute animal. So I did try the sweet and sour because I thought it was fun to eat something that would eat me. So I did try that. But,
you got your revenge.
Yes, but and when I got there, everyone said, "Greg, it rained last night. I know you're going to want to, but don't lick the cane toad." And I said, it hadn't even occurred to me to lick a cane toe, but that's all I'm thinking about now because everyone kept coming up to me telling me don't lick it. Okay, but what a place. I mean, you had the giant bats by the archery. You know, you climbed. What's the name of that mountain? Oh, that beautiful mountain that you could climb or
Oh,
hike up. The Oldfield? No, not
down
Oldfield.
Oldfield. Yeah.
Oh, was it? Oh, okay, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. What a beautiful place. The what 9-hole golf course on the top. The plains land there. I mean, it is a very beautiful resort, right? I
It's
mean,
actually just been put back on the market. So it was bought by a Chinese firm in 2012.
okay.
They were going to do a big development of it, and they've just put it back on the market. So I'm secretly hoping Club Med will buy it and turn it back into a Club Med.
Oh, me too. Me too. Because I saw a report on 60 Minutes about it that just devastated me a few years
Yeah,
ago. A
it's
few
been
years
left to
ago.
ruin.
Yeah,
Horrible.
yeah. Oh, it was horrible. They were right on the stage where we used to do our shows. Oh, yeah, well, fingers crossed for that. So now, after a year in Lindemann, did you get to choose, or did they give you a dream sheet like, "Hey, where'd you like to go next?" Or
Yes and no. I think as the first season musician, they sort of didn't give you a whole lot of choice. And obviously back then you needed to do 3 or 4 years in your zone before they moved you out of zone. So I got offered Sheraton in Malaysia, had no idea about it. So I just said yes, because I'd been offered a contract. Had a couple of months in between where I went and visited my girlfriend at the time, who was working in Tahiti in Moorea. She'd been moved to there. So my second season was with Jean-Pierre Franquin. That was in Sheraton, which was another phenomenal season. So my first 2 years were just off the charts, amazing, with great teams and great chief of villages. I actually got invited to go to the chief of village conference or the big seminar in Paris, or it was actually Morocco, to say goodbye to Gilbert Trigano,
oh,
the
okay,
founder. So that, yeah, after 24 months in Club Med, I remember telling guests, I'm having the time of my life, and even if they stopped paying me, I'd still do this because I'm doing everything I want to do.
yeah, exactly, right. I mean,
I'm glad they kept paying me though.
yeah, exactly.
Not a lot, but they kept paying
Yeah,
me.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was not there for the money, clearly, but yeah, I
No.
mean, I would do it for free, and I did do it for free because after Playa, which we'll get into, I did a season au pair because there was no contracts for I guess Canadians in Italy. So I actually, if you remember Michele, who we met in Playa, Michele was my au pair land sports. So then I went to Italy to be his au pair land sports. Okay.
Yeah, he was a great guy. Ended
Yeah,
up being a great chief of village too.
yeah, and that season we met was one of the ones that stand out the most, where I met you and Lulu, people and everyone. So that was one of those seasons that stands out. I think there was a lot of talent at Playa Blanca in 96, 97. Did you think that as well?
Oh, it was an amazing season. I think just the environment. You're in a jungle. You're 3 hours from anywhere. The guests come for a week and leave altogether, and the team was just next level. It was really one of those seasons, probably in my top 2 or 3, where it sort of, we sometimes say all the stars aligned, and yeah, it was just one of those really memorable times where you look back and sort of wish that it had never ended.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there's something special. I don't know if you feel this way about opening and closing a village, right? Like you're there, the guests aren't there yet, then you close and you stay after. Do you find there's something special about that?
I think it's just a team thing. I think when there's a transitionary team, you don't all start and finish together. So there's something about the camaraderie and the all-in nature of all being there to open and then all being there to close that just sort of solidified the team. And the fact that, there wasn't anything outside really the resort. You just had to stay there and work together. Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I've done another season the same when I went to Camarina in Italy. It was a opening and a closing, and the same thing happened. You all were there for a week setting up and busting your gut to get ready for the GMs, and then you all leave together. So yeah, I think it's that. It's one team that all are there for the same reason and all arrive and leave together.
Well, since we're on Playa, I was curious from 92, 93 to 2005, did you ever meet a GM that was as memorable or eccentric as Uncle Larry? Like
No,
Uncle
no.
Larry must be top one or top three, right? I'm guessing.
Yeah, he was a crazy man, beautiful man, but obviously, a little bit
He,
eccentric
yeah,
and very
he lived at
memorable.
Playa Blanca, and I think when Playa closed, he went to Cancun. And
Yeah, I actually caught up with him post the season. So when I left Playa in April or the end of April to 1998, I actually went and lived in Los Angeles for 6 months, and we actually caught up on numerous occasions. And he was very generous. He helped me buy a car and showed me the ropes. So I probably saw a side of Uncle Larry that a lot didn't when he wasn't, enjoying tequila on the beach in Mexico.
Yes, with his black leather vest and Speedo and bolo tie and cowboy boots.
And cowboy
Yeah,
boots.
that's etched into my memory.
He had his own sign on the door.
He
Tito
did.
Larry. Yeah.
Yeah. And he had his own. I remember when I met him, I was in the main restaurant and he came in with a circus shirt and it said, "Get horizontal with Uncle Larry." And that's when I went, "Who is this guy?"
Yeah. No, he was a good guy. I think just obviously, had his challenges, but I saw a side of him in Los Angeles that showed me that he had a generous heart, and that's how I like to remember him.
Rest in peace, Uncle Larry.
Yeah.
All right. And then on summer '98, you go to Turks and Caicos. You were now you're chief of animation at this point, right?
Yeah, so I was chief animation in Playa as well, but I had the dual role of also being the animator.
Yes.
And then I took a year off. So I actually left Club Med after the Playa season, which was May '97. Went to Los Angeles for 6 months and then went back to Sydney for 6 months. And then got a call from Lulu in April '08 to, no, sorry, '98. Oh my gosh, 20, nearly long time ago, 20 something years ago. And she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm in Sydney." She said, "Are you having fun?" I said, "No." And then she said, "Well, why don't you come to Turquoise?" And I said, "What's Turquoise like? What's Turks and Caicos like?" And she said, "Well, it's just as much fun as Playa, except the beach is better." And I said, "Book me a flight." So yeah, it didn't take me long, and I arrived there, and that was an amazing season as well. That's where I first met Hendel. We got on like a house on fire, and
was he chief of sports?
He was chief of sport, and I was chief of animation. Yeah, so
Okay.
we sort of had rooms next to each other and became like inseparable. Yeah, great friend to this day.
Is there any like animation sketch or passage like you made your own or came up with on your own? Or is there one in particular that you loved doing personally? Like it was never a chore for you to do? Like
there wasn't one passage I did that I didn't want to do or I didn't enjoy doing. Some I adapted from famous animators. I know that a lot of Bam Bam skits and passages were things that I picked up on. I did a version of his Duracell Bunny skit where I actually purchased a costume. There was no, he did the Energizer Bunny, and there was a Duracell Man. So same skit, just different version. I did a skit where I would run down the beach with a sandwich board on, as a fanaticist yelling, "The end is near, the end is near." And I think it was AJ, the DJ in Turks, that would run with a sandwich board saying, "I am the end." And he'd chase me all over the resort. There was a lot of crazy stuff we used to do. I always tried to do new things because I got bored with doing the same thing over and over, even though the guests had not seen it. I used to try and do a 2 or 3 week rotation. And I'd always, even back then, I was quite organized. I'd had a spreadsheet where I'd write what, game I would do outside the restaurant or what passage I would do so that I remembered when I did it and not repeat too often. But I couldn't do things that I wasn't enjoying. So I'd always try and think, what would I find funny? And let me do that.
Well, I remember a conversation I had with you. You probably won't remember this in Playa. You did a baby sketch in Playa, correct?
I did. Yeah, a giant diaper.
Yes, and you're one of those animators I like, or people I like that stay in character. And you literally would. I remember you telling me this female GM got so mad at you because she was asking for directions, but you were giving directions like a baby would. Like you wouldn't break character, and the more
I wouldn't.
She kept trying to make you break character, the angrier she was getting. And I think after you saw it, like when you changed, you tried to explain to her what, do you remember this at all?
I do. Yeah. I used to remember that I'd never break character. And
yes,
sort of, I understand when I see interviews with Sacha Baron Cohen, when he's in character,
oh God,
there's a bit of a security wall or a blanket that goes up when you take on a personage or you become somebody else. And as soon as you are yourself dressed up as somebody else, it doesn't work. You have to go all in. So I used to enjoy that. I used to enjoy being able to sort of have different ways of expressing myself, and I always tried to keep it fun. And and make sure that it wasn't humor at somebody's expense, but it was just humor that, it was often humor at my expense, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, that's right.
I did enjoy, I don't know if you remember this. I'd always wait till the Wednesday night before I'd bring out my violin. So that was always usually 4 or 5 nights into a guest full week of staying there. And I'd dress up as a mariachi and follow the mariachis around in the restaurant. And then I'd jump up on a table and actually start playing, and everyone would freak out because they all of a sudden realized that I actually could play. So that was always a fun moment in my week.
Yeah, and I remember you would also in Playa where the that circular, I guess, where the circus team would do that in that kind of small amphitheater. You would go on top of the DJ booth and play the violin there too. I think like after the show, like before we hit the nightclub, I remember you specifically just larger than life up there. Rocking out on a violin.
Yeah. Often with bands from Montreal too, which was fun.
Yeah. Actually, one of the funniest things, like I never watched the shows, but whenever you did this number, I would watch. Do you remember I think it's the William Tell, I don't know if it's called that, where everyone has an apple, but you're eating. So you're one of those rare guys that can make eating an apple funny. Do you remember this skit?
Oh, that was Olympic Follies. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But basically the thing was, someone's supposed to shoot the full apple, but you're waiting.
I'm there turn. Eating it.
Yeah. And you could just, so I used to just watch it just to watch you eat the apple. Like that's,
and then I used to accidentally spit it in Jennings' face.
That's right.
Jennings, a circus Geo from San Fran.
Yeah.
But I had to make it look like it was the first time I'd ever done it every single time I did it.
Well, so it was always funny because I would like make a point to go, see the show when you did that number. Now, before we get into your Chief of Sports stage and all that, is there anything from all those seasons, Camarena, Playa, Turks, like, do you have any kind of any funny stories or any interesting stories, or before we move on to your aspirations for Chief of Village?
Funny stories.
No, it could be something that wasn't funny then is funny now. Like I got hurt really badly once, but it's really funny now. It wasn't funny then, but it's funny now the way I tell the story. So it could be, I don't know, or even a mistake you made that, or that you fixed.
Well, there's a mistake, and then I'll tell a funny story.
Okay.
My very first season, I think my very first day, I went to the nightclub and probably stayed longer than I should have. And I may or may not have, this is yet to be proven, fallen asleep in the disco up at Lindemann. And back then they used to lock the disco. So once it was locked, there was no way in or out of the disco. So I think I may have been late to my very first team meeting because I was locked in the disco. But that is to be proven. That's
exactly.
A distant memory. A funny story. The first time I ever went on a sort of an official date with Helene, and you know Helene, I met her in Playa.
Yeah. Yes.
We decided to go for a horse ride on the beach. And back then you could grab a horse. I don't think you could grab a horse, but we may have grabbed a horse and decided to go for a ride. Ended up at Playa Rosa, which is the next beach along. And my horse decided to bolt. Now, I wasn't a horse rider. So it sprinted up the beach and literally tried to kill me by running under a really low-hanging branch. And I had to do like a stunt man, lean right back, arms flailing to avoid being killed. And about 20 seconds later, Helene rode up in tears laughing. And I was very close to soiling myself because I was just that scared that I was going to die. And she said that was the funniest thing I'd ever seen.
So
it was at that moment that I realized I was going to spend the rest of my life with her.
So is that yeah, because I'm actually hoping to have your wife Helen on at a point. So was that what won her over? Like even before the date started?
Who knows what won her over?
Okay.
To this day, I'm still surprised that I managed to find such an incredible girl who loved me despite all my flaws and craziness.
Yeah, she was Circus Geo that season. Correct?
She was, yes.
Yeah, from Montreal.
Season. Yep.
I do like that Lindemann story. Okay. Well, I had a similar one with, do you remember Randy, who came later in the season, and Playa, who I think he was a bronc rider, but then he came as a GM, and then he says he didn't do it on purpose, but he never tightened my saddle. And when we got up to a ride on an incline of a hill, I fell completely. The saddle came off, and I slow motion went to the right, and I tumbled all the way down this long hill. But so I don't know if it was a practical joke or he implied it was I should have checked my saddle, even though I was a beginner rider. Okay. So
I do remember picking up some guests once from Vancouver. I don't know, it might have been you and I, or maybe Tim, the snorkeling geo, and I. We were in charge to go pick up the charter flight from Vancouver at Puerto Vallarta.
oh yeah,
And
it was
on one of
probably
the trips back,
Tim. Yeah,
Tim, I think,
he went
yeah,
there a lot. Yeah.
the bus lost its back wheel. So we were driving
What?
along, and yeah, this wheel just rolls down the highway, and the sort of the bus cranks to a stop. And the bus had two back wheels, but one of them had rolled off and broken. So we were stuck by the side of the road with about 45 very frustrated guests for about 3 hours while we were trying to get another bus and find a wheel, and trying to entertain them on their first afternoon of being on a holiday was not fun.
Well, and how many times did you have to pull that darn bus over to buy more Corona beer because they kept, even when I would do the hour ride, like I had to pull over, and like I've never been in a resort where, you you serve beer out of a cooler, or sold, sorry, in Playa, just to keep, and of course the guests wouldn't want to hear Lulu's speech because they've been holding it in for an hour, so they immediately bolt past the reception area to the bathroom. So I'm thinking, is this really a good idea? Should we be serving them beer?
No, and we used to serve them four. Like, you weren't able to buy one; you had to buy four.
That's right.
Four for $5.
Yes.
I think we introduced the beer after that bus accident because we realized that we needed to do something.
Okay. That's you to thank. Okay. I mean, my pockets were stuffed with cash. I remember handing it over to the gestionnaire, like when you get to the resort, okay, here you go.
Well, it was good because it made money for Club Med. The guests arrived happy, and everybody knew the crazy science. So
that's right. That's right. Yeah, and you made that, and you shot that good little video of all the resort, and you played it on the bus. I remember you going around to each service, showing, okay, this is Greg, he'll be land sports, and this is Tim snorkeling. So that was a good idea too, I thought, because I had never seen it anywhere else.
Yeah, I don't know what made us do that, and we had to shoot it in order because we had no editing equipment.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
I had to spin the basketball my finger in one take, and I remember getting it.
Oh, that was funny. Great season.
Now I see in winter 2000 you did a 1 month interim chief of village stage in Cancun, Mexico. So how did that? Was this like a recommendation from, I don't know, Gino Andretta when you did Gerber Ladouce with him, or how does that happen that they send you there even though you haven't done the stage yet?
So at the end of 1999, sorry, the end of 2000, I'd done Gerber. I'd been to the final weekend where they either pass you or don't pass you for chief of village. It was in one of the ski resorts in France. So I'd been officially, I guess, given my chef de village status, which was then meant that I would be in Paris from sort of mid-December for a 3-month training. But on the train trip home from that weekend, Philippe Raison grabbed me and he said, "Oh, can we have a chat?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Would you be interested in going to Cancun for a month? We need to," I think it might have been Hammer was leaving and Ryan was arriving, or Ryan was leaving. And I think Hammer was leaving. He had to leave to go somewhere else, but Ryan wasn't yet there to arrive. So I think it was just a sort of, like, I felt like it was a bit of a reward. Maybe it wasn't, but being able to go to Cancun for a month and sort of be the interim between Hammer and Greg was an amazing time. It was a great chance to sort of get my feet wet before 3 months training in Paris. And it sort of helped me fall in love with Cancun, which I then went back and did a couple of years later. So, it was a great time.
So you knew you were going to the stage. Now, was it competitive to get on it, or
Well, there was 15 of us. I think they give you the list and you become a nominee, and then they
stagiaire,
that you're on your way to be chef de village. But at this weekend, it wasn't a pass or go. It was sort of, if you can get through this weekend, that's your final hurdle. And I think, to be honest, most of us did. I think there was 2 or 3 that the Paris office decided weren't quite ready, but the rest of us went through, and then we became the new chef de village sort of group of 2001. Yeah.
Now, where did they send you? Opio Vitel for this stage?
Oh no, it wasn't. Paris? It was a Talasso resort at the base of the Alps.
Oh, really?
So I can't remember the name of it.
Oh, okay.
To be honest, but
this was a 3-month stage.
Oh no, sorry, that was for the weekend where they pass you chief of village.
Oh,
the training was done in Paris.
The training.
Yeah, at head office. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
so we lived out of like an Ibis hotel for 3 months, just around the corner from La Villette, which is where
Uh,
the headquarters were.
the Ibis Hotel. I think that's the only hotel where you can actually be in the bathroom and in your room at the same time. The way those right angles were. Okay.
Yeah, it's great.
Maybe there's a room I just kept getting. I don't know.
No, they were pretty small.
So what's it like doing like a 3 month training? Like, I'm not going to ask you what exactly you did every
Oh,
day,
it was
but
amazing.
was it? Okay.
Yeah, we loved it. It was funny because there was three English speakers on the course. Angie Boucher, myself, and Joey Templin. The rest were European, French speaking.
Oh, you were with
And every
Angie.
Friday was I did the stage with Angie.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So every Friday was English Day, where everybody in the training had to speak English because we'd been speaking French for 4 days. And 10 minutes into the first session at 8:45, we all reverted back to French. It wasn't working. So that was funny. No, it was a great training. We got to travel a lot. We went to the opening of the ski season down at Les Arcs. We went to Morocco for a weekend. We went to Vittel to do some stuff. We got trained in all sorts of, crisis management, creativity, leadership. It was amazing. I missed out on the last 2 or 3 weeks because I was then sent to do the opening of Sonora, which opened early, beginning of Feb or mid-Feb. So I didn't get to do the very end of the stage, but I had an amazing time. One of my most memorable memories of that is every Thursday the different educators or trainers would organize something special for the group. And we did this one night where we all had to dress up in sort of formal wear. And then out the front of La Villette, there was 13 little scooters. And this is the day before there was electric scooters. It was just the little ride-on scooters. And we spent a whole night scootering around Paris and having, food and drink stops along the way. It was just one of those things that you think, what am I doing? This Aussie guy dressed up to the nines, scootering around Paris, eating amazing food and drinking wine. There were so many moments in Club Med where I had to pinch myself and say, this isn't happening.
And I assume that you picked up French all in Club Med, correct?
Yes. Yep.
So at what point did you realize with Helene as your girlfriend, soon to be wife, that the French language and the Quebecois are vastly different?
Oh, gee. Probably Playa.
Okay.
Playa was the first time I'd ever heard a Quebec accent.
Oh, okay.
And I remember after one of my skits or one of the things I did on stage, there was this French Canadian girl and she came up to me and in French said, franchement, that's tellement drôle. And I just looked at her and said, sorry, I thought she was speaking Chinese.
Okay.
And she repeated it. I said, oh, sorry, I speak English. And then she said, parle français? And I got that. And I said, yeah, je parle français. But it took me so long. Honestly, it took all of that season. And Helene didn't have a strong Quebecois accent.
She didn't.
She grew up in a French family and went to a French school. So her French was a lot easier to understand. But the real Quebecois, the ones that had a very strong Montreal accent, to be honest, I'm still trying to work it out.
Okay. Well, I had this moment in Australia. I'm an English speaker. French is my second language. And I remember sitting down my first day at the table, and I was straining to understand what the Aussies and Kiwis were saying. And my Italian girlfriend is looking at me in horror. I go, what's wrong? She goes, if you don't understand them, how am I going to understand them? Because she didn't hardly spoke English. So there was a bit of an adjustment for me too, because, the Aussie shorten a lot of things. There's so many Aussie expressions that if you don't buy the dictionary, you don't know what they're saying. So I thought I knew English when I went to Australia, but it took me about 6 months to realize the difference between an Aussie and a Kiwi. Not at first, but 6 months later, I could hear it, So
yeah.
But that's part of Club Med is like learning a new language or getting to hear other languages, right? I mean,
oh, absolutely. And you don't realize how rich that is until you finish and realize that you've been exposed to, cultures and all sorts of people, which just, I think, makes you a better human, to be honest.
Yes. So summer 2001, I guess that's when Sonora officially opened. So you were there before the opening. It's a beautiful spot, right? Sonora Bay with the mountains.
Oh, stunning. Yeah. And I'd pushed hard to be there for the opening. I hadn't got engaged yet, but I was planning to, and we really wanted to get married in Sonora. So we sort of hoped that if that was the resort, that was the village that the team sent me to, that we could plan a wedding for the end of the year, which is exactly what ended up happening.
Are you saying you got married in Sonora?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. On the beach?
We got married in the garden area next to the big lagoon.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I mentioned to the econom sort of in the first few weeks that we were planning this, and he said, "Oh, I'll make sure that we have the budget for it." So look, it was just an incredible night. We had sort of 20 of our closest friends and family flying from all over the world, but we had 700 guests at our wedding, and 15-piece big band and the most incredible food you could ever imagine. And that became the show of the night, Gus and Helene's wedding.
That's right. That's right. Right. All shuts down. It's like state of origin. So Cancun was officially your first season as a chief of village. So did anything happen that like wasn't
Sonora
Oh, sorry. Right. Yeah. Sonora.
Yeah.
So was there anything that happened at Sonora, like as a first time chief of village that wasn't covered in the your training stage? Like, oh, there's no water for a week. What do you do? Was there anything like that? Like,
well, we had a hurricane come through, which wasn't planned. No one had really spoken about Sonora being a place where hurricanes were a threat, but we had, and this was 5 days before our wedding. So 5 days before our wedding, which was supposed to be on the Friday, so the sort of Sunday, Monday, the tail end of a really strong hurricane that was, I don't know, 800-900 kilometers south, whacked the village, and we had no water, we had no electricity.
Oh.
The rain dumped like crazy. The road between Guaymas and the village was cut off, and we only had sort of a couple of hours notice, because I didn't realize that there's sort of sting in the tail of a hurricane. I thought you had to be really close to it. So that was exciting.
I was just using that no water thing as an example, Gus.
No, we definitely had no water.
Okay.
Yeah. And that sort of, in fact, it was horrible weather until about 2 hours before our ceremony, our sort of civil ceremony on the Thursday. So it was a bit crazy, but the clouds parted, and for the next 2 days we had bright sunshine. So.
Okay, I just called you Gus. Now, if I recall, are you nicknamed after a famous cricketer? Is that what you told me?
Oh, Gus Logie. Yeah, there's a cricketer in the West Indies. I used to play in a band. I think his name's Gus Logie.
Oh, okay.
I think that's his name.
Oh, so you were. Oh, so is that why your nickname Gus? Because of him?
Well, when I first got to Club Med in Lindeman, everybody had a nickname, and Tweedy said, "Oh, you need a nickname." And I said, "Well, they used to call me Gus when I played in the band," and I didn't realize that Gus Logie was a pretty frenetic batsman. He used to swing his bat everywhere, and apparently that's who he reminded me of when I played my violin. So he used to call me Gus. Oh, so within a week of being in Club Med, I got a nickname Gus, and it just stuck for 14 years.
And so you're saying you were in a band before Club Med. So what kind of band was it?
It was a bush band. So think sort of Celtic, Scottish folk music come rock.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of fun. We traveled around Australia and even went to in fact, the year before I started Club Med in the January, we won the Battle of the Bush Bands at the National Country Music Championships. So,
what was the name of your band?
It was called Outback.
Outback. Okay, Cool. Learning a lot of stuff here today, people, that we didn't know. This is why I do the show.
Yes, it was a lot of fun. We didn't have the groupies that all the rock bands had, but we played for the love, not for the girls.
Okay, that's right. Now in summer winter, so 2002 2003, this time you go back to Cancun as chief of village. This time you go longer than a month. That is your so you stay a full year, right, in Cancun?
Year and a half. Yeah.
Year and a half. Wow. Okay.
In fact, longer than that, because what happened is after Sonora, 9/11 hit, and I was meant to go to Huatulco.
Okay.
And Huatulco closed. So I went home with Helene. We were on our honeymoon and then just waited at home for a call from Paris, which actually never came. And by about the 20th of December, I'm thinking, I'm still getting paid. I think I'm still employed, but I better call Paris. And I called them and they said, "Oh, yeah, where are you?" And I said, "I'm at home in Australia." And they said, "Where are you meant to be?" And I said, "Well, I was going to go to Huatulco, but that's closed. So I'm just ringing to see what the deal is." And they said, "Oh, we don't have a village for you, but would you like to come and work in the Miami office and, do marketing?" Which is what I'd done in university as part of my tourism degree. So we ended up in Miami for a few months, but then Helene was living at home in Montreal. And I wasn't aware that they had started a visa for me, a work visa. So I ducked across the border to Montreal and to see Helene. And then on the way back into the States, they said, "What's your purpose to go to Sandpiper or to Florida?" And I said, "I'm just going on holidays." And they said, "Oh, you don't have a visa in the works?" I said, "No, I'm just going to have some fun and visit my friends at Club Med." Anyway, it ended up being a big debacle. I got questioned for 4 hours and they said, "Well, there's a work visa in process for you, so you're not going back to the US until that's approved." So I got stuck in Montreal and I ended up having to fly directly from there to Cancun about 2 months early because I couldn't get back into the country. So it was a bit of fun. Helene had to fly back to Australia to grab all my things and bring them back to Cancun.
Are you
so
serious?
Yeah.
Oh,
Because I couldn't go in the States. I was banned.
Please say she was there at least longer than a week before she had to come back.
Oh, she flew directly from Montreal to Australia, grabbed my stuff.
How long did she stay in Australia? Please say longer than
48 hours.
Oh my God. Okay. You have to stay married to her after that. I'm sorry. Oh my God. So did you like Montreal?
I love Montreal. Yeah,
Okay,
we'd actually planned to live there, and maybe we still will one day. We've got kids in high school at the moment, so
okay.
No, it's my favorite city in the world. Love it.
Oh, nice. Okay. So Cancun, anything in all your time there, anything memorable happen?
Cancun was amazing. I think one of the most memorable things I was actually at a GM conference or a Chef de Village conference in Paradise Island, and one of the skiers or one of the local fishermen had been attacked by a croc. So this was beginning of my third season, beginning of the summer season, and the Miami office decided to close down water skiing.
Yes, I remember this. Yes, the
story. My gosh.
Yeah.
And I got back to the resort, and every European in the village was just going ballistic because they couldn't ski. They couldn't So it was a tough few months because that whole summer there wasn't communication that had gone out to all the guests that had booked, but they arrived, for water skiing, which was phenomenal in Cancun, to be told that the water skiing was closed due to a crocodile attack.
And it was really, from what I heard, it was like he was fishing, so it was really the fish that Albert was after. Really, it wasn't humans.
Exactly, and it was a bite. It wasn't
exactly.
Rip your arms off.
Yeah,
they ended up reopening skiing, but it was too late for me. I had a really challenging third summer there because of that.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay.
Oh, that's okay. Oh, the other fun thing was we got stuck on a boat. I took all the geos out to a big geo party, put them all on a boat at the old scuba dock, and we decided to sort of sail into the lagoon and have a big party on the boat for a few hours. I think we were going to end up at Senior Frogs or one of those daddios or something. And it was low tide, so we ended up getting stuck at the entrance to the lagoon and just sat there for 3 hours and had a party on the boat without moving.
Really? It was that. I don't recall, like, there's no other place in the world where the high and low tide is as drastic as it is at Lindeman. So I'm interested to hear, or surprised to hear that
like, I don't know why
got stuck for 3 hours.
We got stuck a long time. Okay. Yeah.
When you were there,
it may not have been 3 hours. It felt like 3 hours, but
you in the opening, like the tides were still, like, you had tide tables at Lindeman, right? Because you could literally walk when the tide was out. You could literally walk on the stone. So that was still going on, right? I assume on Lindeman.
Absolutely, yeah. There was 20 foot tides. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, for some reason, I'm looking at the list of villages you supplied me. You do summer seasons, and then boom, I see you go to Crested Butte in Colorado to play in the snow. Did you like the snow?
Loved it.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Had an absolute ball. We'd just had our firstborn. So Sebastian was born in Mexico, born in Cancun. So he was 6 months old, and we always wanted to do a ski village. So we requested Crested and got it and had a great time. Yeah. We almost bought property in South Crested Butte.
Okay. Now, did you already know how to ski? Ski and snowboard?
Yeah, I knew how to ski, but I obviously got a lot better over the season. But no, we had a great time there. Loved it. Couldn't say a bad word about it. We had a good team. A lot of Brazilian guests, which surprised me. A lot of well-off Brazilians would come and ski there. Met a few old chief of villages that were still, coming on their geo vacances. It was great. Had a great time. And then, finished my tenure with a year at Lindeman.
Yeah. So did you request that, or they proposed it? And okay.
No, I requested it. I sort of knew that unless I could continue to work close to home, it was going to be challenging. We were a growing family. I wasn't spending enough time with Helene. I loved being chief of village and I love Club Med, but I'd sort of probably prioritized that over Helene and my bub, and wanted to make sure that we had good seasons and good results. So it was putting a strain on things. And I knew that if I kept going, I was probably going to end up as a great single chief of village, which is not what I wanted. So we requested Lindemann, hoping to sort of use it as a bit of a platform for what was next in our life. And I did request a position at the Sydney office after Lindemann because they wanted me to go back to Jebel Adus. But Helene had just had our second. So we were, two young kids in, and I just wasn't prepared to go back over to, that part of the world and not spend time with my family. So we took a few months off and then decided to call it quits, but in a very amicable and beautiful way. Like, I still have fantastic relationships with Club Med, and don't regret a day of it.
I'm curious, what accent do your kids have?
Oh, Aussie. Yeah,
Oh,
no,
okay.
they've grown up in Australia.
Good. Okay.
Helene spoke French at home for the longest time, but then went back and studied at university and started speaking more English at home just as a result of that. So, but no, they all speak French, but they have an Aussie accent.
Okay, that's wild, man. Jeez. Okay. Wow. What are let me ask you guys, what are the three things you miss the most about Club Med? If it could be in any order, like I mean, I think about this question a lot. I was just curious if there were
That's a great question.
three in particular, or only one or two.
I miss the travel. I still very much love travel, still get excited going to airports. When we're not working, we're traveling somewhere. So I love the travel, visiting new cultures and meeting people from different countries, and the camaraderie of the team. So the team element, and I think that's what I enjoyed most about being chief of village, was just building a team and loving on them and making sure that they all left, a bit bigger and better and stronger than when they started. Even if we didn't, have the perfect season, I really got a lot of joy out of pouring into the team and helping them grow and, love what they did. And then thirdly, I think just the way that travel and meeting cultures stretched you. So I was a little, Aussie kid, 21 years old, had not traveled really out of Australia when I started, and knowing the growth in me over that period just by my boundaries and ideals and sort of mindsets being stretched, I think it gives you a worldview that is really matched in anything else you do. So I've yet to meet a GO that spent a lot of years in Club Med that hasn't turned out to be just an amazing person, because they've got a beautiful broad view of life and love people and are non-judgmental. And so I think those three things. I hope that doesn't sound too deep.
No, not at all. Now, besides Hendel, who you mentioned earlier, are there any other GOs or even chief of village, like anyone chief of service you enjoyed working with, like or just have fun with? By all means, call out people that you liked and have fun. Like,
there was three of us in Cancun. So the second season, I think in Cancun, I worked with Nicole, who was our chief of sports. She's from Texas, and Marquito from Brazil. So the three of us were sort of like
Nicole Cooper?
Three amigos.
Nicole Cooper?
Yes, Nicole Cooper.
Yeah,
great golfer.
I was with her in Lindemann.
We had a great time together, the three of us. Oh, gee, it's hard to start naming names because then you're going to miss people.
Well, no, but it could be even people that before you were a chief, like if any other chiefs, like I know you mentioned Lulu and, Hendel as a chief of sport.
I had great chief of villages, except for one or two. I think most of them were very memorable. I worked with Lulu for nearly 3 years. I found her tough at the beginning just because she was really, she had really high standards, and I probably wasn't at that standard yet. So the first couple of months was a little bit challenging, but we grew to have an incredible respect for each other. And then I worked, 6 months in Turks with her, and then another year in Huatulco. So we ended up working for, I think, 2.5 years together. And then visited her in Barcelona a few years later after she left the club. So still in touch with Carlos, not as often as I was a few years ago, but we still have a good relationship. Still good mates with, obviously Hendel and all that group of American chef de village. So a lot of them I reconnected with at Hendel's wedding in Thailand. So Hammer and Ryan and Kevin and Greg and all the guys. I wish in a way I'd spent more time in the American season, because I think that was my most memorable period in Club Med. I sort of feel like I'm more connected as a North American geo than I was with the Asian teams. But no, I've got plenty of great friends, and as I said, most of my dear friends, my long sort of lifelong friends, are geos that I met and did that first season at Lindemann with. That came to my wedding, and we still catch up when I'm in Sydney. And yeah, it's beautiful memories. It's my Facebook feed is full of people that I have dear memories of, and know that if I picked up the phone after, I mean, even you and I hadn't spoken for what, 25 years?
Something
And
like that.
In a way, I feel like there's no way that period of time has gone by since
Yeah.
conversations. So,
Yeah, exactly. We're
yeah,
picking up right where we left off.
it's amazing.
Now, maybe one last quick story. Like you worked for many years, so you must have encountered a celebrity here or two at Club Med. So I was just curious if you what's your most memorable celebrity encounter, or
Oh, geez.
is it someone we might not know because it was an Aussie celebrity, or because you never notice how like certain celebrities come, but only that this certain nationality knows who they are and the other people don't. So,
Well, probably the most notable was a guy called Lou Pearlman, who was the manager of the Backstreet Boys.
oh, that's right. Wow. Okay.
When I was at Cancun, he decided to run a talent camp,
Oh, okay.
and it was a very challenging few days because there was no organization from their end, but every wealthy parent from America who wanted their kid to be the next Backstreet Boy turned up with their child, and they ran auditions all day long. And then after about 2 or 3 days, they turned it over, and the next group would arrive. So he was probably the most sort of well-known name of somebody I met.
I'm guessing you had a lot of stage moms there that week, right? I think that's what you're saying. Okay.
It was crazy, and there was too many people booked for the amount of rooms we had.
Oh God.
We had no rooming list even at 11 o'clock the night before they arrived. I still remember sitting up with the reception team trying to work things out. It was a challenging few days. We had a few chefs and famous people at Lindemann, but I don't. Apart from that,
Well, I do have another. I might have an easier question for you. Like, it's if you can let me ask one last one.
Sure.
It might be tough, okay? Because I like to find out from people, XGOs, if there was one season in particular that stood out. I use the word magical, even though I get teased for it a lot. But it could be, you could like them all for different reasons. But I was just curious if one or two, or did one stand out above them all? Was it your first season because it was your first, and
there was a few that stood out.
Okay.
Lindemann stood out because it was my first, and I met a lot of great people. My season in Bali was amazing. But if I had to pick one, I would say Playa Blanca.
Really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I think just the fact it was my first time in the American zone. It was an adults village, which meant the whole atmosphere of the village was different. A lot of fun, a lot of connection with guests that you didn't always get when you're with sort of families. And of course, that's where I met my sweetheart, and the memories of that season, just in terms of the team, the shows, the fun elements, the great Chufa village, I mean, it was just, like I said, the stars aligned, and I never would have imagined that I went there as a guy who'd just broken up from a long-term relationship and ended up meeting somebody that I was going to spend the rest of my life with. But I think Playa for me would be the standout season for that reason.
Yeah, well, I went there with every intention of being single, and then like a dummy got a girlfriend after week 3, I think. So anyway, but I always did that, Go to family villages, I'm completely single. Go to Columbus for 2.5 years, completely single. Okay.
Yeah.
Go to Playa or Cancun, girlfriend. Okay, I'm like a magnet.
All right. Well, that's okay. It's probably better than being single. It's probably safer.
It is. You're absolutely right. Right. Well, Gus, man, I can't thank you enough for sharing your story with us. I'm so happy you said yes. You could have said no, would have been fine by me as well. Because you'll always be like the tops in my books. But thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Really.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and I hope the listeners enjoy the stories.
I think they will, because like I said, your name comes up quite a lot on this show. So I was hoping to have you on and maybe trick you with that, but I'm so glad you said yes. But no, your name does in fact come up a lot. So thank you so much, Gus, for being here today. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
All right, everyone. That was Luke, Gus, Neale, and we'll see you all next week, everyone. Say bye, Gus.
Take it easy, guys.